Hello, everyone, and welcome. Make a cup of your favorite drink and get comfortable because this is a wonderful time for new stories from Yellowcat. Send your own stories in the comments below and maybe they'll be in our new video. What's the fastest you've seen someone fired from a job? I was running a town center bar and hired a new barmaid. She seemed really good at interview, bright, bubbly, keen. She had no experience, but I can teach anyone to work a bar, so I hired based on personality and that gut feeling about who would be the best fit in the team. Interview on the Monday, I asked her to come in on Wednesday night as it's quiet. One of the other pubs in town did a live tribute band every Wednesday, never figured out how to compete with it, so I could train her on the tills, pours, health, and safety before she worked a busy shift on the Friday. She says that's fine, really keen to get started. Nice. Wednesday rolls around and mid-afternoon I get a phone call from this lass. I'm so sorry to do this on my first shift. Would it be okay to do my training tomorrow instead? I'm feeling really poorly, been sick a few times, and I think I should just go to bed. I had no reason not to believe her. She seemed genuine at the interview, still seemed keen to work. Just a case of bad timing. So around 7 p.m. in the evening, I finish faffing in the office. The bar's quiet, my staff are bored and cleaning stuff because there's only about 12 people in and it's dull. Then she walks in, half drunk, dressed for a night out, and completely oblivious to the fact she's just walked into her new job that she called in sick to. Total working time? 0 minutes. I used to work in a shipping department for a place that fixes really expensive plane components. When the stuff is fixed and is being shipped out, some of it is worth up to $500K. I was talking to one of my old coworkers the other day and he said a new guy dropped a unit that cost $5K on his first day and was gone the next day. I was arguably fired from a job before I had actually started. It was mutual. One summer in high school, I applied to a bunch of entry-level retail jobs. Got my first call back at a local grocery store to be a bagger. After I interviewed, I was offered the job over the phone. I said, great, when do I start? I was told that the schedule for each week was done on Tuesday evening and that they'd call me with my hours. No call on Tuesday evening, so I left a message on Wednesday morning for the manager I had spoken to, then went off and did whatever. No response all Wednesday, so I tried again Thursday morning. Thursday afternoon, I came home to an angry message on the answering machine from the manager. I called in and he proceeded to yell at me for not showing up to a shift that no one had told me about. I pointed that out and that I had called twice and he hadn't called me back. That was my problem, apparently. He told me that if I wasn't there in half an hour, I was fired. I laughed into the phone and hung up. My company hired a software engineer because he had a great resume. I tried pointing out that maybe it was a bad thing that he had worked for so many companies, but hey, who am I? We work in financial service and do work for a lot of big companies you've heard of. These companies like to keep an eye on us. Every week, we have people from Fortune 500 companies in our buildings, so everybody has to wear business casual. This is stated in the interview and in the paperwork you have to sign once you're hired. First day, shows up wearing sandals and a big floppy hat, earning him the nickname Kangaroo Jack. He spends the day with his feet on his desk. Second day, his manager explains to him that he needs to bathe and wear deodorant daily. Third day, he tells his manager he's going to need to take a couple hours off in the middle of the day for a tutoring job he's picked up. 3 days is a long time compared to some of the stories in this thread, but this was for a job that required a college degree and years of experience. I'm guessing his job was paying between $60,000 to $80,000. Friend of a friend got hired at a call center, but the mother effer was so lazy he called in sick after the first week of training. He continued to call in for any reason he could think of. Call center tried not to fire him because it messes with their retention numbers or some S on the corporate level. Eventually, after not showing up to work for weeks in a row, they finally fired him. So he is unemployed for about 2 years straight, living off his savings and parents, who he doesn't live with, of course. He doesn't pay his mortgage for well over a year. Guy sits on his A for 2 years straight playing video games, reading books, and watching Netflix on my account no less because I left my account logged into his PS3 when I was there once. He applies for another job because he's about to get evicted from the house by the bank. It's for a sales job. He gets hired but doesn't even go to his first day of work. Didn't even try. Just sat at home watching Dexter or some S on Netflix. Gets promptly fired. Guy gets evicted, is now living with his mom. He's well into his 30s. His plan is to move to the Caribbean, where he was born, and become a beach bum. Good plan there, Guy. I fired a guy on his first day about 5 minutes before he clocked in. I was an electrical foreman running a 10-man crew, of which only 4 at a time were company employees, the rest local temps. Columbia, South Carolina. You were a wonderful city, but GD, you had the most worthless temp employees I've ever met, and that's saying something. I fired 30 temps in 3 months in your lovely, vibrant, friendly city. I couldn't understand how a place so friendly, there were dollar beers at the strip club, could have such frighteningly stupid workers. Anyways, the guy that stood out was named John, or Jack, or something. He only worked for me for negative minutes. He stood out not because he was lazy and stupid like the Columbia Standard, but because he was professionally dressed and his tools were well worn, well maintained, and of the highest grade available. He wore his own hard hat and brought up-to-date PPE in a small, neatly rolled bundle under his arm. He arrived about 20 minutes early to the site, and we immediately fell in talking shop over the blueprints. He understood quickly where we were at in the project, and in no time at all, I was very confident and finally found a crew member. At about 5 till, I told him I was headed up to start my crew off, and he pulled a GD pint glass bottle of whiskey out of his GD coat pocket, opened it, and drained the last half of it in a slug and said he'd meet me there. I worked for a newsroom in a local radio cluster. The news director, side note, huge C word, hired a guy for a part-time news reporter job where he would be going out on the field compared to me, who was technically anchoring. Well, the first day, Wednesday, he worked, he had the perfect time to shine because we had a fire and a murder in the same neighborhood in one city we cover. He didn't go. He said it was because the news director should send him, she didn't tell him to go. Both sides were totally wrong. Then on Thursday, he didn't do any work. Then on Friday, the news director was late and he told me he wanted to quit. Lucky for him, he quit right before she came in to fire him. Thankfully, I wasn't there for too much longer. In high school, I got a job at a car wash as a vacuum guy. The basic flow was 1. Customer shows up and requests a type of wash. 2. Customer leaves the car with the keys in it, we vacuum it. 3. Vacuum guy drives it to the car wash entrance, puts it on the track in neutral, closes all windows and doors, and takes the keys out and puts them on the dash. 4. After the car rolls through the 90-second wash, another guy jumps in, starts the car, and drives it off the track to the drying location. 5. A team of 3 to 6 people drive the car and apply any special polish or tire wet or whatever to it. Very basic. In the 2 months I worked there, I saw no less than 5 people get fired on their first day. Person 1, vacuum guy, left windows open on a car before it went through the car wash, said he had to open the windows because he was smoking and didn't want the car to smell like pot. Person 2, Mexican guy, brother of one of the vacuum guys, shows up to work with 2 Bud Light Clamato Chelada tall boys and is fired before he's halfway done with the first one. Person 3, guy puts car in neutral, locks doors, closes doors. Car rolls off the wash into another car. Fired in 30 minutes. Person 4, guy lied about knowing how to drive stick, accelerates at full speed off the line into the back of another 2 cars. Person 5, vacuum guy, found naughty Polaroids of the customer in the passenger seat, kept them, began bragging to everyone that he had them. When the woman came out 3 minutes later, he asked her if she wanted to F him and showed her the pictures he'd stolen. She complained. Thinking about this, there are actually a ton of funny characters I would love to talk about, some of whom got fired or quit, but this guy was first and worst. I was working in a summer cleaning crew for the local school district. I'd done it the summer before, and there are always a lot of characters. This year, one school was undergoing a major renovation, so we were all going to be moving everything in the entire school into shipping containers in the parking lot for storage for the first 2 weeks of the job. One of the other kids working there, Joe, is my age, maybe a year younger, so 18. Tall, muscular, handsome, blonde, funny guy, sociable, well-dressed, really had everything going for him. The big boss was supervising, and since it was summer, he brought his 13-year-old daughter with him to keep an eye on her. She was a quiet girl, a little bit chunky, totally unremarkable, except I got kind of a weird vibe from her. Big Boss goes off to take a phone call and leaves her in the room with a bunch of us sometime in the afternoon. No big deal. Day ends, I clock out, buy a sandwich, and head home. Come in bright and early the next morning, one of my coworkers says, "Did you hear what happened to Joe?" Turns out, while we were all in that room, she gave Joe her number. Joe called her later that night, and Dad, Big Boss, picks up the phone. Boom. Fired. It really made no sense to me. Beyond the fact that she's 13 and the boss's daughter, she was not attractive conventionally, and Joe was. I have no idea what made him think calling her was a smart thing to do. Can't judge a book by its cover, I guess. Too buried deep, but I'll go ahead and share my story of Tommy. I don't even have to do a story, I'll just list all the things he did on the first day as being a waiter. 10 a.m. pre-lunch rush. First day, he walks in and one of the girls says, "Hi, what's your name?" He snaps at her, "You don't deserve to know." I try to teach him the menu and he brushes it off and says, "I don't need to learn, I speak English." He boasts to everyone about how valuable and knowledgeable he is because he's worked at 10 different restaurants before. He keeps a backwards hat on his head at all times. Manager tells him to take it off, but he says he has to keep it on for disability reasons. He looks more like a thug than a waiter. 11 a.m. to 12 p.m. I tried to show Tommy how to input and use the computer. He immediately brushes me off and says, "I've used one before." I say to him, "Hey Tommy, can you refill the glasses at the tables in the corner?" He says, "Shut up," and walks in the other direction. A customer walks in, says, "Hey, can I order the teriyaki chicken?" Tommy takes the order, puts in the wrong number because he didn't want to learn the menu. Wrong dish comes out and tries to serve it to the customer. Customer says, "This isn't what I ordered. I always order teriyaki chicken." Tommy shoves the plate further at him, argues with the customer, and tells him to just eat it. Customer got angry and just left. Customer was a regular. We lost a regular to brash stupidity. Manager sees the whole thing happen, tries to scold Tommy. Tommy shoots back, "I wasn't shown how to properly use the machine, so what could I do?" Manager is too busy to be bothered with this S right now. 1 p.m. He's cleaning a table, and I tell him not to stack the cups or they'll get stuck. He ignores me and keeps stacking the cups. I repeat myself, "Tommy, don't stack the cups." He then shouts at me, "I heard you the first time!" I ask him to hand me a check. He holds on to it for 15 whole seconds while I wait. I repeat, "Can you give me the check?" He finally gives it to me. I say, "Thank you very much." He mockingly repeats, "Thank you very much." Once the lunch rush was over, the manager tells him that he can't use him anymore. Total work time, 3 hours, which was 2 hours 55 minutes too slow. Guys, thank you for all the support and likes. Subscribe to the channel if you're not subscribed yet. See you next time.